Yep. I'm back at it again. Yo, um, I've been looking into some things and oh, I'm sorry, forgive me. And yeah, I've been looking into some things and it seems like people in the US should be very, very concerned right now with what is it looks like is definitely going to be happening with the cost of goods, and of course, first of all, people should be realistic and aware of the fact that just the mere talk of tariffs makes other people take action. Just the mere word tariff makes other nations prepare, and when other nations prepare, one of the effects of that also is the market goes into shock. You know, um, the speculators start speculating. And that has an effect on the market itself, just what you pay, the cost of goods too. And so, already, people are preparing to advert Trump tariffs in a way that it hurts mostly the United States of America as retaliatory measures to Trump's talking and threats. And I don't know if U.S. citizens are totally aware. I don't know what news networks you're watching. If you're watching, is it only CNN? Where are you getting your information from? Because I have this complaint too. I'm online, however, but I watch CNN, I watch MSNBC, I watch the major, legacy media ones here and there, right? Normally, right? But I don't see everything. But I noticed it doesn't seem to be that packed full of information, especially when it's dealing with the international news. And I just think it's a good idea for US citizens to start learning more about the trade you already have with these other nations, these nations that Trump is threatening. Learn a little more about the history of the relationships that has been the norm for the last 50 years. Learn about that, how it's progressed. How, not just that it's progressed, but how it progressed. The different parties, how did the different parties engage each other from nation to nation? What was the thinking? What was the rationale? What were the steps taken? How long did those steps take? Who were the players involved, year after year? Because obviously you're talking about over 50-year relationship with NATO, and also trade dominance. Trade dominance means that, hey, you've come a long way. There are limits to how fast you can go up and how far you can go up at the same time, you know. And in fact, if you can continue to go up, but should you need to go up all the time, should the GDP continue to just grow? How does it get shared with the population per person, the GDP? So when you start attacking other countries, on economy, American citizens should understand one thing: they're their own. They make more money than anybody else per person, but the average person doesn't get as much, maybe, from it. That's the problem. A lot of it stays in the corporate hands. Yeah, a lot of it does. Period. Yeah, a few people have hoarded most of the wealth, you know, things like this. And those things aren't permitted in other countries. Not all other countries, and definitely not all NATO countries at all. You see, so corruption is taken more seriously. And there's a reason for that, because the idea of government is that you have something sustainable. You have sustainable development also. That's a reality. And even for the US, you can go into regression. The US can go back and decline. It can go into decline if you have politicians that want it to and work every second to make sure that it does. The USA can have that, but there's no reason why the US couldn't continue to be prosperous and with its allies and improve on how it treats its own citizens as well at the same time. There's also that avenue for the US. Not every country really has that avenue, but the USA of all nations definitely has that avenue. So if it goes bad, it really is only because the voters voted for it to go bad. You have to understand that. So 4 years from now, we're going to be checking out how things are. I'm not in the US myself, although I'm an American citizen, but I'm not in the US. So I see how things are where I am. Things are stable. Leadership seems pretty stable. People are a little shocked, but people got to go to work tomorrow too. So there's only so much time they can put on speculation. And the Danish government and NATO nations are just they're preparing anyway. They're not, and EU nations, they're not standing still, like waiting on Donald Trump to tell them what to do and what to prepare for. So that the U.S. citizens should understand that. Just because you may not hear it on CNN does not mean it's not happening. You know, the revolution will not be televised. Not this one. You see what I mean? Like, best believe that. So American citizens should invest a little time into understanding the ongoing relations they had before Trump, right? And the last 50 years. And a good place to start, though, is just right where we are right now with this trade and Trump's own specific threats.
So it de escalated in late 2019 when the US and China signed the Phase 1 agreement.
In the Phase 1 deal, China promised to buy at least $200 billion more in U.S. goods and services. But that didn't happen. Now, Trump wants to change that and cut a new deal with the Chinese government.
Until I came along, China never paid 10 cents to this country. They ripped us off and they never paid anything.
Even before Trump's Inauguration Day memo calling for a fresh look at U.S.-China trade relations, companies in China have been bracing themselves for a second trade war by chasing new markets and offshoring production to neighboring countries. The memo also singled out Canada and Mexico, using tariffs as leverage to achieve domestic policy goals.
We're thinking in terms of 25% on Mexico and Canada because they're allowing vast numbers of people to come in, and fentanyl.
Whatever the motivation, it's American companies that could suffer the most.
U.S. auto industry has a very long supply chain that is very complicated, that takes many parts from many countries. A lot of this supply chain and auto parts came from Canada and Mexico. So imposing tariffs on Canada and Mexico basically effectively would be imposing tariffs on GM and Ford's production.
If he goes ahead with the kind of threats that he's talking about, then you would see question marks over how will that impact inflation, how will that impact where business puts their investment, how will it impact the flow of goods around the world.
Yes. I don't want to play too much of this, but tariffs is really, people really need to understand what a trade war can mean for the United States citizens. Now, what that would mean is because of what Trump is doing, he is annexing allies. That means he is stopping the relationship with the people that we've been operating with on security. And trade is part of security. It's a big part of that. Now, so the US is in fact annexing itself from its prior relationships through Trump. and through its voters, right? Unless you believe that somehow the election was rigged or votes weren't counted, which, by the way, there are people claiming that too. There's new evidence that comes out and says that the elections, that all the votes, or that there was more votes that should have been counted that would have changed the election, but such a huge number of votes were discounted for reasons like the signature is not clean or clear or things like this. Like really a lot. And we're going to go into that. But look, enough people did, enough people voted. And that's the fact that it is anywhere close to this. And let's put it to you like this: if people were against this, people would be out in the streets right now, because that is how alarming, that's how alarmed the everyday person should be, because this is going to harm US citizens' lives first, far more than it will anyone else economically. US citizens must come to understand this. And here's some primary reasons why. First of all, most of these countries that you're attacking already have things like universal health care for their citizens, already have things like, free education, right? Even though it might, it always helps to have some money. Um, a lot of it, you can get a lot of education in these countries, right? Now, the thing is that especially come on, look at who he's talking about. Canada, green, who else? Mexico. I mean, US and Mexico. US got nothing to brag about when it comes to education, by the way. Nothing to brag about. The US in terms of healthcare has nothing to brag about. It's rated low on the international scale. Yes, it is. So the fact that you have a president that would want to harm people's pockets is insane. But that is who the real Donald Trump is. That is who he really is. This is a coward who attacks the little people, bullies the little people. That is who Donald Trump is. He is definitely about to harm your pockets. Now, let me just flip over to this real quick. See what it's.
An economic trade war between the United States and Colombia would have significant implications for both nations, affecting citizens' lives, the economy, and general safety. Here's an analysis of the potential impacts. 1. Effects on the Colombian economy and citizens. Economic impacts. Exports decline. Colombia heavily relies on the US as its largest trade partner, especially for exports like coffee, bananas, flowers, oil, and textiles. Tariffs would reduce demand, harming export industries. Currency devaluation. A trade war could destabilize Colombia's peso, increasing the cost of imports and inflation, which would burden consumers. Job losses. Export-reliant sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, and energy would face layoffs, increasing unemployment. Impact on citizens. Higher consumer prices. Imported goods from the US like wheat, corn, and pharmaceuticals would become more expensive, affecting affordability of essential items. Social unrest. Economic instability could exacerbate poverty and inequality, leading to protests and potential unrest. General safety concerns. Weakened security cooperation. Colombia and the US collaborate on anti-narcotics and counter-terrorism operations. A trade war might strain these partnerships, allowing organized crime and drug trafficking to expand. Increased migration. Economic hardship could drive more Colombians to emigrate, potentially escalating migration issues in the region. 2. Effects on the US economy and citizens. Economic impacts. Supply chain disruptions. The US imports key goods from Colombia, such as coffee, flowers, and minerals. Higher tariffs could disrupt these supply chains and raise costs for consumers. Agricultural exports. Colombia is a key importer of US large agricultural products like grains and meat. Tariffs would hurt American farmers and agribusinesses reliant on Colombian markets. Increased inflation, reduced imports of affordable Colombian goods could contribute to higher prices for everyday items. Impact on citizens, costlier consumer goods. Products like coffee and flowers, staples of the US market, would become more expensive. Job losses in export sectors. Industries dependent on Colombian markets, such as agriculture and machinery manufacturing, would see reduced demand and potential layoffs. General safety concerns. Weakened regional stability. Economic instability in Colombia could increase migration and drug trafficking to the US, exacerbating border and security challenges. Strained diplomatic relations. A trade war could damage broader US-Latin American relations, reducing regional cooperation on key issues like climate change, migration, and security. 3. Broader geopolitical implications. China and other competitors. A trade war could push Colombia to strengthen ties with China or other nations, increasing China's influence in Latin America at the expense of the US. Regional economic fallout. Neighboring countries could also face ripple effects, destabilizing the region and complicating US foreign policy goals. 4. Mitigation strategies, diplomatic resolution. Both nations would benefit from prioritizing negotiation to avoid long-term harm. Diversification. Colombia could diversify trade partnerships while the US could seek alternative sources for key imports to reduce interdependence. Social programs. Economic relief programs could mitigate the impacts on vulnerable populations in both countries. An economic trade war between the US and Colombia would be costly for both nations, disproportionately impacting vulnerable citizens and undermining regional stability. A collaborative approach to resolving disputes would be critical to minimizing these risks.
So you see here, the only people that are the people that will definitely be hurt are the middle class and the poor of Colombia and the middle class and the poor of the United States of America. These are the groups that will instantly begin to pay more for products. The wealthy won't be hurt at all. Some of the businesses might suffer, but the businesses are not the wealthy, because the wealthy in the United States, their CEOs are getting like the lion's share of the damn money. It's not even operations. The CEOs spend less on operations than anybody else. You see what I mean? So this is this is crazy for Trump to be even talking about tariffs, because the mere fact that he keeps mentioning the word tariff, what that signals is you starting to pay more money for goods. And I'm sure you've probably already started noticing that the price of goods have gone up. And you know why it's gone up? Because companies, this is not the 1930s and shit or 20s, you know what I'm saying? Companies today are very advanced. So as soon as they hear a tariff, they start making plans and changing logistics, you know, where they going to sell this stuff. They start saying, oh, well, we have to sell it to this one and this other person. That's okay. We got a problem with the US. They got a problem with us. So we will sell to the EU or China instead. Now look at this. It's a couple of key things. First of all, I wanted to point out, if I didn't before, that there's something that these other countries do definitely better than US citizens. And that is the average person works together better. They're used to a little bit more economic hardship and still having unity. I'm talking about communities of people. They have a strong history of helping each other, communities, you know, neighbors, this kind of thing, recycling, this kind of stuff. This is another, it's another, it's actually a very interesting way of doing things. If you go to Colombia, you should go there and visit the place. I learned a lot myself by going there. I learned more than I ever would have by being outside of Colombia. Colombia is the #2 biodiversity place on Earth. #2. That means they have more types of plant life and more types of animal life than anywhere else. So that's two positive things. You should think about that. The fact that they're number two biodiversity in the world, and the fact that they're used to working together. That's a cultural feature that the circumstance created through time. American citizens don't have that. So they're not that good at recycling, sharing, helping the poor, blah, blah, blah. All of these things, making sure somebody got a roof over their head, even if it's not the best, but something, you know, um, just freedom, even freedom to be left the hell alone as long as you go to work. You know, they have access to education and healthcare. If you're not from there, you don't get a part of the healthcare. But if you are Colombian, you got healthcare. Look, it says here mitigation strategies, diplomatic relations. Both nations would prioritize, negotiate. Right, right. Okay. Diversification. Colombia could diversify. Let me open this up so y'all can see this. Hey, Andrea. Hey, I see you. Yep. Check this out. Diversification. Colombia could diversify trade partnerships while the USA could seek alternative sources for key imports to reduce. But who are you going to seek it from when you're attacking everybody? Who are you going to seek it from? Another NATO nation? You're going to make a deal with another NATO nation? Or are you going to make a deal with China? Or are you going to make a deal with Russia? Who? You're going to go to Africa and make a deal? Where are you going to make your deal at? You want to make your deal with why not make your deal with with Mali? Yeah, Burkina Faso. You want to make a deal? Why not? Putin's working with them. Why don't you go and work with them? That would be interesting to see. But what would they make up for that trade deficit? Probably not, because they produce something else that people don't need. Gold. You don't need gold. You don't eat gold. People don't live in gold houses. Number two, biodiversity in the world tops what Mali got. You understand? It's nothing personal. What Mali has is great, but Colombians got food growing all around them, everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Number two, and they got food growing and food running all around them. Number two, biodiversity in the world. So keep that in mind as we talk, right? But where is the U.S.? Who are they going to go to offset the deficit? Okay, and then look, social programs, economic relief programs could mitigate the impacts on vulnerable populations in both countries. Sure, in Colombia that will work, but in the United States of America, we don't give a fuck about the poor and the middle class. And that is the law. That is the unfettered truth of it, ain't it? That is the law. It ain't the law, but that's how they promote it. Those Republicans promoted like anything trying to help the poor and the middle class is socialism, y'all. No, that's not capitalism. You made the money through capitalism to help. That's not capitalism. You know, it's like crazy. That is so nuts. I mean, it's extreme. It's an extreme government, essentially extremist government at this point. And although the words are extreme, the actions have not yet happened fully, but some actions have that indicate anything can happen, like the executive orders. But in any case, let's all of them didn't make it through courts though. But it's still worth looking at. But hold on. So those two things, you apply this. The same story is going to come up if you say Canada. Let me see here. Present the same data for Canada and USA. Yeah, just so we clear about this, to have another reference. Let's see here. This is not something American citizens should want a president using as a bartering chip, because he is literally bartering your physical life, like it's nothing, like it's cheap. That is what Trump is doing. And if you accept this, You are cheap. That's what it basically means. I hate to say it, but that is literally what it means because other nations are not treating their people this way. All right, let's see here.
Here's an analysis of the potential implications of an economic trade war between the United States and Canada on citizens, the economy, and general safety. 1. Effects on the Canadian economy and citizens. Economic impacts. Export reductions. The US is Canada's largest trading partner, accounting for nearly 75% of its exports. Key sectors like energy, oil, natural gas, automotive, agriculture, wheat, pork, seafood, and lumber would be hit hard. Currency fluctuations. A trade war could weaken the Canadian dollar, making imports more expensive and fueling inflation. Job losses. Sectors reliant on US markets, such as manufacturing, forestry, and agriculture, would face significant layoffs. Investment decline. Uncertainty from a trade war could deter foreign and domestic investment in Canada. Impact on citizens. Higher consumer costs. Imported US goods, such as machinery, electronics, and certain food items, would become more expensive. Reduced wages and opportunities. Industries reliant on US demand might cut wages or reduce hiring due to declining revenues. Regional disparities. Provinces like Alberta and British Columbia, reliant on energy and lumber exports, would face disproportionate impacts. General safety concerns. Cross-border tensions. Increased tariffs could strain cooperation on critical issues like border security, drug trafficking, and law enforcement. Social unrest. Economic hardship could lead to protests and increased public discontent, particularly in trade-dependent regions. 2. Effects on the US economy and citizens. Economic impacts. Supply chain disruptions. Canada is the largest supplier of crude oil, natural gas, and lumber to the US. Tariffs could disrupt these imports, impacting industries like construction and energy. Higher prices for goods. Consumer prices for products like lumber, affecting housing costs, seafood, and vehicles would rise due to reduced imports from Canada. Agricultural exports decline. The US exports large amounts of agricultural products, corn, soybeans, and poultry, and machinery to Canada, so tariffs would hurt American farmers and manufacturers. Job losses. Industries dependent on Canadian trade, like automotive and steel, would experience reduced demand and layoffs. Impact on citizens. Increased living costs. Goods like paper products, vehicles, and construction materials would become more expensive for US consumers. Regional impacts. Border states, e.g. Michigan, New York, and Minnesota, heavily reliant on Canadian trade would face economic downturns. General safety concerns. Border security strain. Economic tensions could lead to reduced cooperation on border security, potentially increasing smuggling or illegal crossings. Environmental and safety issues. Joint initiatives on environmental protection and disaster response, e.g. Great Lakes management, might be hampered. 3. Broader geopolitical implications. Strained alliances. Canada and the US share a historically strong alliance through NATO and trade agreements like USMCA. A trade war would weaken this relationship, undermining cooperation on global security and climate change. Impact on North American integration. The US, Canada, and Mexico's economies are closely linked. A trade war would destabilize supply chains across the region, affecting industries like automotive and manufacturing. 4. Mitigation strategies. Negotiation and diplomacy. Avoiding tariffs and resolving disputes through USMCA arbitration could prevent long-term harm. Economic diversification. Canada could diversify its trading partners to reduce reliance on the US, while the US could seek alternative suppliers for key imports. Social and economic support. Governments in both countries could implement programs to support industries and workers affected by tariffs. Conclusion. A trade war between the US and Canada would be highly disruptive, given their integrated economies. While Canada would face more severe economic impacts due to its reliance on US markets, the US would also suffer from higher consumer costs, job losses, and strained cross-border relations. Diplomatic resolution and cooperative trade policies are essential to mitigate these risks.
Now, so the outcome is the same, in fact, even more devastating too. But still, again, who is affected by this? The wealthy people of Canada are not affected by this. The wealthy people of the United States are not affected by this. The average person, middle class and lower class person, is definitely only affected by this in both nations. But here's a key thing again. Look, let's go back to mitigation again, just like it was in the other nation. Look, negotiating, avoiding tariffs is wise, blah, blah, blah. We get that. Yeah, everybody knows that except Trump. Economic diversification. Canada could diversify its trading partners to reduce reliance on the US, while the US could seek alternative supplier for its key imports. Who? Who, Donald Trump? Who will you go to seek alternative suppliers for key imports? Will you go to China or will you go to Russia? Or will you go to Mali or Burkina Faso? What are you going to do? Because, you know, I don't know what you got in mind, but distance equals money. And these are your closest allies. These people are right in your vicinity. And you're talking about annexing them like you're going to get a cheaper price for something somewhere else, somehow, some way. So we know Donald Trump has no intention of reducing reliance. That takes relationships. And when you're attacking all your neighbors, who are you gonna attack? Who are you gonna get your products from? Another NATO nation? No, because they're gonna sit your ass down and be like, "Listen, yeah, good. We all interested in that. Yeah, yeah, yada yada yada. But what the fuck are you doing, Mr. Trump? Stop attacking us. Get your ass back in line with the program, or we're not conceding to any of this shit. If you want to suffer your own citizens, go right ahead. But we will outmaneuver you, and you will have very few to go to for alternative suppliers for key imports. And your middle class and your poor will definitely be in the streets. And if they're not smart enough to get in the streets already, let them feel the pain because you have annexed yourselves by your vote. Look at this. Let's go to the next one. Social and economic support. Governments in both countries could implement programs to support industries and workers affected by tariffs. No shit, Sherlock. But guess who is not down with that? Donald Trump is not down for implementing programs to support industries and workers affected by tariffs. We know that he is not. And secondly, Canadians know how to work together through hard times better than US citizens. US citizens do not have a good record of working together in hard times because they have not constrained the extremists in their capitalistic democracy. They have not restrained the most extreme elements. See, if it was moderate capitalism, like most of these other NATO nations, moderate, it's still capitalism. It's just not extremist capitalism. Folks would have shit like universal health care, paid education, not just free, but also paid a salary to go that you don't pay back, that you're not holding on for your life in debt, stopping you from buying a house in the American dream. You see what I mean? This is going to hurt these people, and American citizens need to know what it is in real terms. I hope people are not sitting back waiting for the TV to light the alarm signal. Corporate media has not lit the alarm signal, but other people have. You see that you should, if you don't know, then let's review some of them. Let's see here. Keep this in mind too. I think Malcolm Nance, he just had a new one. Yes, is it? How many days ago is this? Here we go. Oh. Can you see this? Let me hold on. Let me see this one more time. Is this a clip or is this the last live he did? Okay, he doesn't do lives. Okay, I'll play this one.
Tech oligarch billionaire going with. What is it when you find a country that starts a week off with a tech oligarch billionaire going Sieg Heil and showing the Nazi salute, not once, but twice, behind the podium of the President of the United States during an inauguration? People making gestures of the National Socialist, the Nazi Party. Then you have a leader that releases thousands of prisoners who were criminals arrested by the justice system and sent to jail for their crimes of attacking the government. And then what do you get when that same leader fires tens of thousands of government workers, then eliminates all independent inspector generals and to get rid of oversight in one day against the law, then spends the rest of the week attacking minorities, then starts installing unqualified toadies that weren't fit enough to be the manager of a fruit stand into positions of high power so that they would carry out his deadly will. Then eliminates all reference and laws related to equality from the government. Then starts using the law enforcement to round up undesirables who were poisoning the blood of the country. Then overturned parts of the judiciary or ignored it entirely, and then started taking an aggressive military posture as if he was going to invade his neighbors. You would think, God, Donald Trump is out of control. And you'd be absolutely right because he's promised or done all of those things. But I was actually speaking of Adolf Hitler. He carried out all of these acts and destroyed the Weimar Republic's democracy in just 53 days. Donald Trump is obviously being chased by the devil because he apparently wants to get it done in 14 days so that he can spend the rest of that time luxuriating over how close he is to Adolf Hitler. Now, before you start saying, Malcolm, you can't say that. Again, we had Elon Musk, the tech billionaire, literally give the Nazi salute on stage twice. This man then started pontificating about how Western civilization was saved by the election of the very clearly, obviously white supremacist Trump. Wow, this is just an amazing week. And what it is that this is the start of that tyranny that I keep talking about. Now, as you all know, I'm a Philadelphian. And on Monday, I had a rocking, amazing, fist-throwing discussion on London broadcasting about what it means to be an American from my city and how I, a strict constitutionalist, value the documents and the words which made America what it is until last Tuesday, which was a representative republic, right? And as we all know, America being a republic is a democracy in which the rights of the minority parties are protected. That is still a democracy for all you MAGA guys who are listening and your heads are exploding that I keep using the democracy word. A republic is a democracy. Or so it was until we entered this period of tyranny. We have entered the time of Mad King Donald I. God forbid.
All right, so I'm going to stop this for folks that don't know who Malcolm Nance is, but if you don't know, you should look him up because he has an extensive background in, I believe, foreign intelligence, and also, but here, let's see, it's military. I'm going to bring it up on the screen. 2 seconds. Here we go. Let's hear a little bit about his background, right? All right, Malcolm Nance, excuse me, is an American author. Hold on, let me see. Okay, here. Let's hear it.
Malcolm Nance is an American author, media commentator, and former naval intelligence officer known for his expertise in counterterrorism, intelligence, and national security. Here's a summary of his background and contributions. Background and career. Military service. Nance served in the U.S. Navy for 2 decades, specializing in naval cryptology and intelligence. He was involved in operations in the Middle East, Africa, and the Balkans, focusing on counterterrorism and insurgency analysis. Counterterrorism expertise. Nance is a recognized authority on topics such as Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and extremist ideologies. He has conducted fieldwork in conflict zones and has studied terrorist networks extensively. Teaching and training. He has trained military and intelligence personnel on survival, evasion, resistance, and escape techniques, as well as on counter-terrorism strategies. Public figure and author. Media appearances. Nance frequently appears on television networks like MSNBC as a national security analyst, where he comments on terrorism, foreign policy, and intelligence matters. Books. He has written several well-received books, including The Plot to Hack America, 2016, explores Russian interference in the 2016 US presidential election. The Plot to Destroy Democracy, 2018, discusses Russia's broader efforts to undermine Western democracies. They Want to Kill Americans, 2022, focuses on the rise of domestic extremism in the United States. Key contributions and views. Warning on Russian influence. Nance was among the early voices to raise alarms about Russian interference in US elections and the broader implications for democracy. Criticism of extremism. He has been vocal about the threat posed by domestic terrorism, particularly from far-right extremist groups. Advocacy for national security. Nance emphasizes the importance of intelligence, preparedness, and resilience in countering threats to the US and its allies. Recent activities. Ukraine Volunteer Service. In 2022, Nance joined the International Legion to assist Ukraine in its fight against the Russian invasion, highlighting his commitment to democratic values and international stability. Media engagements. He continues to be an influential commentator, discussing evolving threats and global security dynamics. If you'd like more detailed
All right, there you have it. So that was Malcolm Nance. So let's go back to what he's saying here.
That he should try to pretend to be an American. He didn't even put his hand on the Bible, I shit you not, to swear that he would protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, which means Donald Trump didn't even think, having the faith to believe that he was going to uphold, protect, and defend the document which we all love and cherish, and which I have risked my life for my entire career. But more to the point, Donald Trump has decided he is not only going to go out and try to beat Adolf Hitler's record of breaking down a democracy, he has really leaned in to putting his lack.
All right, 2 seconds.
He had his right hand raised, but his left wasn't on the Bible. But does it matter? Academics tell Reuters that it wasn't over doesn't have much practical impact, although the moment has gone viral online. One professor at the University of Texas told us that a president doesn't have to connect to God in this way. The oath is to the Constitution. 2 Bibles were held by Trump's wife, Melania, as she stood next to him at the ceremony.
Yeah, okay. Is that what it was? Let's see. Um, in any case, back to Malcolm.
Go out and try to beat Adolf Hitler's record of breaking down a democracy. He has really leaned in to putting his lackeys in place, the unqualified subordinates who he thinks is going to do his bidding. And the worst of this week is Pete Hegseth, the guy who is a young Fox News host, who is a well-known drunk. He is an alleged rapist, but he paid off the woman who he sexually assaulted with a $50,000 payoff and non-disclosure agreement. He is an abuser whose sister-in-law and his mother both came out in writing and said that he abuses women. He is a white supremacist, Christian nationalist, wearing the white supremacy and Christian nationalist symbols on his body in ink. He is a junior grade infantry officer of the National Guard, not even the regular army, who has now been put in charge of the single largest bureaucracy on this planet and will most likely be the Secretary of Defense, who will carry out orders to shoot and kill other Americans because he is an incompetent toady. Now, I only spent 20 years in the armed forces.
Malcolm Nance is going hard on this guy. And you know what? I'm just curious. I'm wondering, like, are Americans listening or
to the United States and another 15 or so years working with and as a contractor to the United States intelligence community. So what do I know about loyalty to our oaths? Let me put it in the immortal words of General Milley, who said, "We don't take an oath to a king. We don't take an oath to a queen. We don't take an oath to a dictator. And we definitely don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator." And that's where we are. We have a wannabe dictator who is working his way up the full-blown Kim Jong-un, Vladimir Putin level tyrant this week, who has decided he is going to put in his toady to run the armed forces of the United States into the ground, almost as if he was an agent of a foreign power that wanted to destroy America, because no one will mean the salute that they give to Pete Hegseth. Let me tell you, you will have incidents where Hegseth will be insulted and will be called out at some point by some service member that just doesn't give two about a drunk rapist leading the Department of Defense. And believe me, it'll be by some service member that mean the salute that they give to Pete Hegseth. Let me tell you, you will have incidents where Hegseth will be insulted and will be called out at some point by some service member that just doesn't give two about a drunk rapist leading the Department of Defense. And believe me, it'll be a brilliant court-martial, and that person will become an instant celebrity. But I'm not going to talk about that because I'm a Navy chief. And even to this day, I remain a Navy chief. And let me talk about some things that our service members need to understand. After the My Lai massacre in Vietnam, in which a young lieutenant, William Calley, ordered his soldiers to slaughter 250 women and children because he felt the order meant that he had to kill everyone, so he committed a micro-genocide, the armed forces of the United States instituted a policy of morality in combat and ethics. All service members are obligated to disobey unlawful orders that are given to you by commanders above you. And that includes the commander-in-chief. If the President of the United States orders the Secretary of Defense to shoot civilians, every service member has an obligation to the Constitution of the United States to not carry out that order. Now, as a chief, why do I have to remind you of this? Because clearly the command authority of the United States is a deranged, mentally ill, 78-year-old geriatric who thinks he's going to break this country up into white people and all the rest of us. The last person that tried that was Timothy McVeigh with a car bomb in Oklahoma City when he thought he was going to have a bombing that was going to bring down the government and the FBI and rise up white people to take control and take command of the country. That's the last time I heard that seriously. And now it's in the White House.
Wow. Malcolm Nance is going in. I hope people are listening because it doesn't sound like things are in order. I want to see if there's any protest already after I listen to Malcolm Nance. And respect to Malcolm Nance for that. Actually, I'm gonna come off of that right now, but let me put that in the link for folks because Malcolm Nance, that was deep. Malcolm Nance. Okay. Boom. All right, now let me I didn't know he was a Navy chief or something. Let's see here. Protest. Are there any Trump protests? Let's see here.
In Fort Worth, also happening. About 200 people gathered near Montgomery Plaza in Fort Worth. Protests like these, the one that Sydney is covering for us in downtown Dallas, the one you're looking at right now in Fort Worth, have really been happening all across the country. You can just see a lot of passion. Clearly, it's unclear exactly how long it's going to go on in Dallas tonight, but we are going to continue monitoring these, and we will have more for you coming up tonight on WFAA News at 10.
Wow. That's interesting. So there are protests going on.
And we are going to...
Okay, let me see something. Chicago. Yeah, because there's been some raids.
Organizers called it the People's March for Justice. A protest originally planned for Inauguration Day took place today downtown. The group called on President Trump to end violence in Gaza and stop mass deportations. Our Noel Brennan was there as the crowd marched down Michigan Avenue.
The crowd here is showing support for Palestine and also opposing President Trump's plan for mass deportations. Among the speakers here today was an immigrant rights advocate who made worldwide headlines almost 2 decades ago. The march to Trump Tower was planned for Inauguration Day. The bitter cold on January 20th postponed a protest, but did not stop it.
The target is the Palestinian people.
Speakers from a coalition of more than 60 organizations took the mic in front of a crowd that first gathered at Water Tower Place.
I'm here in solidarity because I am human.
Speakers like Elvira Arellano, whose story resonates now as it did nearly 2 decades ago.
I am not criminal. I am not terrorist.
In 2006, Arellano took refuge in a church in Humboldt Park.
My son, he is citizen.
She and her son stayed there a year to avoid deportation, but that day came in 2007 when she left the church to attend a rally. Arellano's story spread, and so did her activism.
These are all people protesting Trump's immigration policy. Okay, well, that's good because their lives are on the line, like straight up. Jan 6 rider refuses Trump's pardon. Whoa.
For the first time ever,
of convicted felon Donald Trump's second term as president, he fulfilled one of his most egregious campaign promises. Trump pardoned virtually all of the 1,500 people who were charged for crimes relating to the January 6th insurrection. That blanket pardon includes the 608 individuals who were charged with assaulting, resisting, or impeding law enforcement officers that day. Trump has defended his decision, calling their sentences ridiculous and excessive, even though over 140 police officers were viciously assaulted that day. The announcement was catnip for his MAGA base, but the pardoning of those convicted of violent crimes has been met with valid and pointed criticism by Republican members of Congress, police unions, and even some of those that are receiving the pardons. That last group includes my next guest, who, despite being charged with entering the Capitol with those rioters, now rejects the pardon that's been issued to her by Trump. Joining me now is Pam Hemphill, who pleaded guilty to the crime of entering the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021. Pam, I welcome you to the Katie Phang Show, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk about your experience. I want to remind our viewers, you didn't skate on this. You served 2 months. You served 60 days in jail. You were also sentenced to 3 years of probation and a fine. Now, Trump has offered and has issued a full pardon for you. It would legally clean the slate for you. Why are you saying no?
Oh, no. It would be a slap in the face to the Capitol police officers, the rule of law, to our nation. I pleaded guilty because I was guilty. It would help their narrative that it was a peaceful protest that day. No, it was not a peaceful protest. It was an insurrection. I don't want a part of anything that Trump is offering.
Pam, you've described yourself as being under the spell of the MAGA Trump cult. For you, what did it take to break that?
Wow. That is crazy. That is crazy. Wow, there is a sane one in the bunch. Oh my goodness.
Spell? Trump cult. For you, what did it take to break that spell?
Actually, it was 2 events. The first one is when, in my mind, I wasn't a victim yet. I went there. I wasn't planning on breaking any laws or harming anybody. That's not me. So I kept that victim feelings going on. And when my therapist looked at me and said, Ms. Hemphill, you're not a victim, you're a volunteer. And I got mad at him. I went home that night and I thought about it. He's right. I've been sober now 45 years, working a 12-step program. And one of the steps says, when you're wrong, promptly admit it. Well, I wasn't properly admitting it. So I did some writing, I did some introspection, and I said, yes, I had no business being there. I broke the law. That's it. That's done with it. The second incident is when Ryan Samsel had put out an article that on the Gateway Pundit that he had lost his whole eye. I researched it, got some information, found out that wasn't true. He did not lose his whole eye. And I went back to my space. It was a J6 space on X, used to be called Twitter, and told the mega group that put together what happened. And they got.
Are y'all listening up, MAGA?
Upset at me. No, it's not true. That's not true. He did lose his eye. And I said, no, I got evidence. But so they ended up putting out a smear campaign against me. And then I started the J6 gaslighting space, and the sedition hunters, researchers, and Democrats came in and started sharing me facts. And I said, this is it. They're lying about everything. And I'm going to push back on their narrative.
Pam, I'm so glad that you brought up the word and you're using the word facts, because the facts and the truth always need to be shared. Although you've written that you speaking out with the facts has come at a great risk to your personal safety and well-being. Why is it so important then that perhaps it's just symbolic for you not to accept this pardon from Donald Trump. But why is it so important for you to just continue to speak out like you're doing today on the show, for that people to understand that the gaslighting of you and others that participated on January 6th is very real, but that the true facts about what happened reveal that there was no big lie, there was no fraud in that stolen election?
I guess because I was lied to and paid the price, 60 days in prison, for listening to all the propaganda that was going on out there, not doing any fact checking myself. Hopefully, if there's another Pam out there like myself that is not paying attention to what Trump is putting out there and doing their own research, I know it's difficult because in a cult, you get gaslighted so much. You got to decide for yourself. Do you really want to continue
This lady is breaking it down.
listening to Trump and all his lies, or find out if they are lies? Just check it out. Just do some fact checking. One or two things. I don't know about you. When somebody's lied to me, it's not okay with me.
And for your final message to those that have now celebrated the fact that they've been pardoned. We look at Stuart Rhodes, for example, and we look at others who say, I'm going to go get guns, and I'm celebrating the idea that I've been pardoned. What's your final parting message to them?
Well, I really believe they have been given a green light to go out and be violent. We need to be careful. I'm afraid of any peaceful protest that's going to happen out there. We need to be careful.
And for example, and we look at others who say, I'm going to go get guns, and I'm celebrating the idea that I've been pardoned. What's your final parting message to them?
Well, I really believe they have been given a green light to go out and be violent. We need to be careful. I'm afraid of any peaceful protest that's going to happen out there. That any protest that goes against Trump's agenda, they will be out there, and they need to be careful and aware that they mean business. They're very dangerous. And I'm sorry that we're going to have to go through this. I just want to say one more quick thing. Just remember what Trump has trying to do right now. He's trying to turn the clock back on civil rights. And I think we need to start focusing on that and pushing back.
Well, Pam, something that's important that you have done today and that you're continuing to do, for which I do laud you, is being honest about what you went through, accepting the accountability and the responsibility, which you have done. Frankly, you've done more jail time than some of the people that have been pardoned. And I appreciate your courage for speaking and for being so transparent. Thank you, Pam, for being with me today.